I was raised by immigrant parents who barely spoke the language. They didn't have degrees, no fancy titles, but they worked hard, running a tiny clothing store, Monday to Saturday. My dad had to sew the clothes. My mom had to sell them. It wasn't a big or successful business. Their dream? To give me a better life than they had. They poured every dollar they earned into my education. I went to a private school, surrounded by polished uniforms and polished last names. As a child, I wasn't aware of the huge difference between my life and theirs. To me, we were just classmates, all wearing the same uniform, sitting in the same classroom. Slowly, I realized my classmates were the children of accomplished lawyers, doctors, and business owners. I remember going to a friend's house for a group project once. It was massive, with 5 cars in the garage. The more time I spent with them, the more I noticed how different their world was from mine. At first, I felt lucky to study in such a great school. But slowly, I started feeling embarrassed. I didn't want to tell my friends what my parents did for a living. I didn't want to show them our old car. And I started wishing my parents were more like theirs. As I grew up, small disagreements turned into big arguments at home, and I started using my education like a weapon. Even if I tried to explain, "You wouldn't understand, Mom." That's not how it works, Dad. I thought being more educated made me superior in any discussion. I thought I knew everything better just because I had read more books. Even when my mom was cooking and said something was healthy, I'd challenge her. "Where did you learn that? That's not correct." I questioned everything, dismissed anything they said, and I didn't realize how cruel I sounded until much later. They never argued back. They stayed silent, maybe because they believed I truly knew more than them. But I could see it in their eyes, the hurt, the discomfort. They didn't want to fight, and still, I kept pushing, determined to prove my point. I thought being right mattered more than being kind, and I couldn't see how much I was wounding them. Time went on. I graduated, got a job, moved out, and slowly, I began to see life for what it really is. Bills, deadlines, pressure, rent that drains your paycheck, groceries that somehow cost more each week. And then it hit me. This is what they carried, while paying for my private school, and they never once made me feel the weight of it. One weekend, I stopped by their little store. My dad was taking out the trash. My mom was finishing a sale, speaking to a customer in her broken English. As a kid, I saw that scene 100 times. But now, it looked different. They had built a life, run a business, raised a child, in a language they barely spoke. That's strength. I started thinking, how did they do all this? With nothing but determination. No connections. No language. No safety net. They built a life from scratch, in a place where everything felt unfamiliar. Could I have done the same? And yet, I had looked down on that. For the first time, I saw how blind I had been. My dad may not be a doctor, but he has a skill that puts food on our table. My mom may not be a top executive, but she sells, saves, and manages every penny, every risk. They don't have degrees, but they have grit. They have wisdom. And now, I finally see how extraordinary that truly is. They didn't buy new clothes. They didn't eat out. My mom used to cook at home and bring her food to the store because it was cheaper. But on birthdays, they always made sure we had a special dinner at a restaurant. They saved every penny so they could give me what I needed, and many times, what I simply wanted. Maybe they weren't successful doctors or lawyers. They didn't own a huge house or have 5 cars in the garage, but they succeeded at what truly matters. They raised a son in a foreign country, and gave him everything they could. Not wealth, but opportunity, so that he could get a better job and build a better life. I wish I could take back every word I said, every moment I made them feel small. They didn't deserve that. They never did. But they never held it against me. They never asked for an apology. Only my happiness. And now, that makes me feel the weight of my own words even more. Now, when I think about success, I don't picture suits or corner offices. I picture tired hands, late nights at the store, and a quiet couple who gave everything so their son could dream bigger than they ever could. What I used to envy in others, I now admire even more in the people who raised me. I owe them more than I can ever repay. Not just for the education, but for the values, honesty, kindness, perseverance. Things no textbook ever taught me. No classroom, no degree. Just two hard-working people, teaching by example, day after day, without ever needing to say a word. I never said, "I'm sorry." Maybe the shame is too heavy. The words feel like a mountain. Maybe it runs in the family. This way of feeling more than we say. But I think they know. They see it in how I've changed, how I speak to them now, how I treat them, like the quiet heroes they've always been. For the first time, I saw them clearly. Not as people who lacked success, but as people who endured, who built something out of nothing, who taught without speaking much, who gave without holding back. They weren't just small business owners. They were examples of quiet strength, and I finally saw the greatness I used to overlook. Never mistake a lack of education for a lack of wisdom, and don't wait too long to honor the ones who raised you, because some lessons don't come from books or classrooms. They come from life, and they only make sense once we're old enough to truly understand them. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched you in any way, consider subscribing and share it with someone who might need it today. Until next time, remember, your story isn't over. The most meaningful chapters may still be ahead.